John chapter 6 is probably one of my favorite chapters in the entire Bible. Obviously, as a Catholic, it has the bread of life discourse, and from it we can expound our Eucharistic theology quite well. But I also like it because it heavily emphasizes God's sovereignty, His providence, His efficacious grace, and it even has a pretty great Petrine confession at the end. However, lately I've been thinking about or meditating on one particular verse that we always just glance over when we read John chapter 6. We just read through this verse, we don't think much about it, and we just miss the deep Trinitarian mystery that is waiting for us to unpack in meditation. This verse is John 6:57, which reads, quote, "As the living Father hath sent me, and I live by the Father, so he that eateth me, even he shall live by me." End quote. This is a pretty weird verse. I mean, just as Christ lives by the Father, so we are going to live by him when we receive the Eucharist? I mean, what does that even mean? Throughout the entire Gospel of John, which is obviously a very Trinitarian Gospel, we have these sections in which Christ teaches us about his relationship with the Father. In John chapter 5, verse 26, he says, quote, "For as the Father hath life in himself, so hath he given to the Son to have life in himself." End quote. In John 10:30, quote, "I and my Father are one." End quote. In John 14:11, quote, "Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me." End quote. In John 16:15, quote, "All things that the Father hath are mine." End quote. So what does this mean for me? What does this mean for us when we receive the Holy Eucharist? Obviously, Christ is a divine person, the Father is a divine person, we are not. So what does this mean? Well, what we see here is that our Lord is trying to draw some sort of similarity. To give an example or analogy, God the Son receives the entire divine nature from God the Father when he proceeds from the Father. So there's not a single thing that the Father knows that the Son does not know. There's not a single thing that the Father can do that the Son cannot do. God the Father is all holy. God the Son is all holy. So obviously we're not going to become omnipotent. We're not going to become omniscient because we are not divine. However, Christ became flesh. And as St. Augustine says, he gave us that very same flesh to eat. So this verse is better understood that just as God the Son in his divinity has all that the Father has, we will have all that God the Son has in his humanity when we eat his flesh. This is exactly what St. Augustine says in his Confessions. He writes, quote, "I am the food of the mature. Grow then, and you shall eat me. You will not change me into yourself like bodily food, but you will be changed into me." End quote. So we eat bodily food every day, we take it into our body, and our body converts this food into nutrients for our own body. However, the Holy Eucharist, which is Christ himself, transforms us into him. All that the Father has is the Son's. All that the Son has in his humanity is ours. The Eucharist conforms us to Christ. Cornelius a Lapide says, quote, "Because I receive Godhead, which is pure life from the Father, therefore he that eateth me, even he shall live by me. For my Godhead abiding in him will continually breathe into his soul the breath of life, and his body shall after death be raised up by it to the beatific life." End quote. Another renowned commentator from that time period, Juan de Maldonado, comments extensively on this, but I think this really helps to see what the evangelist John is trying to say here. Juan de Maldonado writes, quote, "But whoever understands the nature of Hebrew expression will easily grasp it. The Hebrews often omit the word used for comparisons like just as, and use and instead, a usage very frequent in John's Gospel, who more than any other evangelist delights in Hebraisms. For example, in John 10:15, "As the Father knows me and I know the Father," that is, just as the Father knows me, so I know the Father. And in 15:9, "As the Father has loved me and I have loved you," that is, just as he has loved me, so I have loved you. So too in this place, "As the living Father has sent me, I live because of the Father," which means, just as the Father who sent me lives, so I live because of him. Now that's just the first clause. With regard to the second clause, Juan writes, quote, "The same phrasing is used, and whoever eats me, he too shall live because of me," meaning, just as I live because of the Father, so he shall live because of me. This sense is confirmed by John 5:26, where the same truth is expressed in the very same words we use to interpret this verse. Just as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son to have life in himself. And also 5:21, just as the Father raises the dead and gives life, so also the Son gives life to whom he will. End quote. And this manner of reading John chapter 6 is very, very popular, very common in Catholic tradition. St. Cyril of Alexandria comments on this, quote, "As the Father hath sent me, so that I am become man, yet I live by the Father, that is, I perfectly preserve the Father's nature, so he who shall receive me by eating my flesh shall surely live, being made holy like unto me, who am able to give him life, because I am of the living Father." End quote. So when we receive the Holy Eucharist, who is Christ himself, we're not receiving sanctifying grace in the same manner that we do in the other sacraments. This way is extremely, significantly more intimate. If you want to imagine just how intimate receiving Christ the Lord is, think about divine procession. Think about the Holy Trinity. God the Son is the perfect image of God the Father. He is in the Father, and the Father is in him. This is why Christ says, "If you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you will abide in me, and I will abide in you." This should also stir up extreme humility in us, because as Christ says, "All that the Father hath is mine," and we should be humbled that the God-man is willing to communicate all of his goodness, all of his grace to us, if we accept it with humility and with a clear conscience. It should further humble us, because this means that everything good that we have comes from Christ in the Eucharist. He is that bread of life. He is our spiritual sustenance. As St. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 4:7, "What makes you differ from another? And what do you have that you have not received? And if you have received it, why do you glory as if you have not received it?" Now, yesterday was the Feast of Corpus Christi, so I am like a day late, but hopefully you can take this to your next Mass and meditation, and hopefully you can ponder the Eucharist with the Trinity in mind. For in a sense, in the way that I've described in this short video, the Eucharist and our manner of receiving it is an image of the Holy Trinity. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to like, subscribe, share, comment, and God bless you.